and welcome to board member training. I will be talking to you about immunity as part of your role as a board member. Making sure boards are not restraining trade. As board members, it is important to consider the impact of your actions and your immunity from legal actions, as provided by the Department of Labor and Industry. Board actions may unreasonably restrain trade or provide for an anti-competitive regulatory environment. Board members are private citizens who serve on boards in a largely voluntary role, as appointed by the governor. They take time out of their lives to provide valuable expertise to the state regarding the regulation of their profession. Or they may be serving as a public member, bringing a valuable perspective to a board. In general, board members are often active market participants, meaning they are licensed by the board in the profession they are regulating. However, the same expertise and experience can lend itself to anti-competitive behavior. Less competition could mean more money, power, business for fewer entities. Also, this could be seen as restricting trade. In addition, licensing boards, by their very nature, are anti-competitive with regulations that limit competition and impose licensing requirements. Board members may have motive to make anti-competitive decisions or discourage competition. So why does this matter to you, the board member? Well, board members could be personally liable for actions taken in their roles as board members. This may put your personal assets at risk. We at the department do not want to see this risk to board members. The department's active supervision process over the boards helps protect board member immunity. Board authority with active supervision. When we look at board authorities, licensing requirements limit access to a profession. A board's authority, scope of practice, and other requirements are authorized by the legislature in statutes, or Montana laws, known as Montana Code Annotated, or MCA. Boards implement legislative authority and licensing requirements to protect public health, safety, and welfare by issuing rules, also known as regulations, published in the Administrative Rules of Montana, or ARM. For example, licensure is often based on education, experience, and/or exams to practice. Boards also address fees, applications, discipline, and compliance with regulations. It is important to understand that antitrust laws are designed to ensure businesses can compete fairly or are competing fairly. No one likes to get sued, and no board member wants to get sued based on their action serving on a professional licensing board. Active supervision is how the Department of Labor and Industry and the legislature exercise supervision over the licensing boards to be sure that the decisions boards are making are not purely for anti-competitive reasons and to provide immunity protection to the boards. These regulations are necessary to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. For example, we expect the surgeon to be appropriately licensed to perform heart surgery. We also expect a plumber to be appropriately licensed to install plumbing in a home. So how did we get here? Non-dentists set up teeth whitening businesses in North Carolina, specifically in malls. Dentists complained to the licensing board, but complaints focused on the practice of dentistry, not on a danger to the public. The North Carolina Board of Dental Examiners responded to complaints by issuing multiple cease and desist orders to these operators, alleging they were practicing without a license. As you can imagine, this closed most of those businesses. In 2010, the Federal Trade Commission charged the North Carolina Board with violating the Federal Trade Act by excluding the non-dentist businesses and indicating the board's actions were anti-competitive. A judge also ruled the board's actions constituted an unreasonable restraint of trade and a method of unfair competition. This led to action in 2015 by the United States Supreme Court. With a 6-3 decision, that a state licensing board composed primarily of active market participants has state action immunity only when actively supervised by the state. The court further held that the board had not met the active supervision requirement in this case. The court also found that the North Carolina board did not have the active supervision of the state. Therefore, board members could be sued in their personal capacities and did not have immunity for their actions. The Supreme Court opinion did not define what active supervision entails, leaving the states to determine how to handle the issue. Immunity and active supervision. Montana response. In response to the Supreme Court ruling, states have taken action to address immunity issues and active supervision of boards. In Montana, the legislature addressed the issue by providing for a review procedure by the Commissioner of the Department of Labor and Industry in statute or in the laws in MCA. A key element of the statute says what is quoted on the slide. The Commissioner shall determine if the board action is made or taken pursuant to a clearly articulated state policy, the statutes, and if the restraint or potential restraint of trade or commerce is reasonable and necessary to protect the public health, safety, or welfare. Again, the Supreme Court determined the North Carolina Dental Board and members could be sued in personal capacity because no state action immunity applied to them because there was no active supervision prior to their actions. We do not want to risk the role of the licensing boards in Montana. This is why there is much great focus on the department's role in active supervision of the boards and this training. DLI Active Supervision Process. This slide shows a visual image of the department's process for active supervision and Montana's response, outlining the valuable steps for oversight and review to help address potential immunity issues. Following the arrows from the upper left corner down to the lower right corner, the process starts with the department or a board identifying an action that requires active supervision because the action potentially restrains trade or competition. A board may also request written confirmation that an action is not subject to active supervision. When an issue has been identified for review, the department will notify the board and the Economic Affairs Interim Committee, listed as EAIC on the slide, which is the Legislative Oversight Committee for the department. The board has 30 days to respond with written comments and materials justifying the proposed action. Next, the Commissioner will meet with the board or its representatives, hold a public hearing if needed, and, at this point, receive public comment from non-market participants so they have input on an active supervision issue. Then the Commissioner will issue a written decision to the board within 30 days after the meeting with the board, but may require the board to submit additional information. In the final steps of the review process, the bottom row of blue boxes on the slide, the board and EAIC will be notified by the Commissioner of a written decision. The board may request reconsideration, and a similar review process starts with 10-day timelines. EAIC will notify the department if an issue will be on the agenda for public comment at their next meeting. And finally, EAIC may suspend a final determination. Now that we have gone over the active supervision review process, you may be wondering, when is the state not obligated to provide legal defense to board members? If the Commissioner does not agree with action a board is going to take, the board will receive warning and an active supervision decision. Should a board continue with a proposed regulation or action, the department would be unable to provide legal defense to the board or board members. The board would know this prior to taking such action as part of the decision-making process. In such a case, the board would be acting without active supervision and put board member immunity at risk. What kinds of decisions are not subject to active supervision? Remember, Board members should be making best decisions to not run afoul of antitrust laws, to minimize risk, and by listening to the advice given from staff and legal counsel. But from a regulatory perspective, let's look at what kinds of decisions are not subject to active supervision. This includes actions that lead to reasonable restraints on competition, such as prohibitions on fraudulent business practices and untruthful or deceptive advertising. It also includes initiation and prosecution of legitimate lawsuits. Also, most individual disciplinary licensing decisions or required actions by a board are not subject to active supervision. For example, if the board suspends a license for substandard work, it does not unreasonably harm competition. But if a board denies a series of license applications, it may have an effect on competition. Unreasonable restraint of trade does not meet public safety and welfare standard. Another key item is staying focused on the board's mission of protecting public health, safety, and welfare. This involves understanding the statutes and rules governing the practice of the board. Minimize risk of antitrust issues. Let's consider risk again and what boards can do to minimize risk of antitrust issues. It is important for boards to have a clear process for transparency, public participation, and communications, including active engagement with non-licensees and stakeholders. Remember that regulatory boards exist to regulate, not to advocate for a profession or licensees of that profession. Such work is more the role of associations. Communication with stakeholders is key for collaboration and for recognizing and understanding the different roles in the regulatory environment. Boards should also take action based on clearly articulated state policy, the statutes, by having clear scope of practice authority in those statutes, and by understanding the value of active supervision from the department. Finally, we need to recognize that the marketplace will change and evolve over time with new technologies and potential new competition. The boards will need to address these issues with assistance from the department. Again, the department is here to provide active supervision and protect board member immunity to help avoid antitrust pitfalls when boards are making decisions impacting a profession and licensing pathways. Board member immunity key takeaways. Active supervision is important. It is a key factor in establishing state action immunity, which protects licensing boards from antitrust lawsuits. Active supervision helps ensure that boards are effectively regulating professions and protecting public health, safety, and welfare. Active supervision increases transparency and accountability in the licensing process. Next, boards should work collaboratively and communicate with the department to ensure compliance and to address any concerns. And finally, active supervision benefits boards by reducing risk of lawsuits and protecting board member immunity by enhancing legitimacy of boards to the public and other stakeholders, and by improving public confidence in the professional licensing process.